The crystal chandelier cast dancing shadows across the marble floor of the Blackstone Industries boardroom as Trevor Blackstone III adjusted his platinum Rolex and smirked at the woman sitting across the polished mahogany table. $500,000, he said, his voice dripping with the kind of confidence that only comes from never facing real consequences. Cash. Right now. Alicia Coleman, 34, sat perfectly still in her modest navy blazer, her hands folded calmly despite the circus of wealthy executives watching this unfold like a gladiator match. Her dark skin seemed to glow under the harsh conference lighting, making Trevor's pale complexion look almost sickly by comparison. The bet is simple, Trevor continued, running his fingers through his perfectly styled blonde hair. You think you can run a billion-dollar company? Prove it. 1 month. Full CEO authority. The room held its breath. 15 board members, all men, all white, all waiting for the entertainment to begin. But when you fail, and trust me, you will fail, I want you to admit in front of every business publication in the country that affirmative action and diversity hires are destroying American business. Alicia's expression didn't change. Not a flicker of anger. Not a trace of intimidation. Just calculation. What Trevor didn't know was that he had just made the biggest mistake of his privileged life. Let me understand this correctly, Alicia said, her voice steady and professional. You're offering me $500,000 to serve as interim CEO of Blackstone Industries for 30 days. That's right, sweetheart, Trevor leaned back in his chair, practically purring with satisfaction. And when you crash and burn, which you will, you'll publicly admit that women like you only get opportunities because of political correctness, not actual competence. The board members shifted uncomfortably. Even for them, this was crossing a line. And if I succeed? Alicia asked. Trevor's laugh echoed off the mahogany walls. Succeed? Do you have any idea what it takes to run a company like this? The pressure? The decisions? I'm asking about the terms, Alicia interrupted quietly. What happens if I succeed? Trevor waved dismissively. Won't happen. But fine, if by some miracle you don't completely destroy my grandfather's company, you can keep the $500,000 and... I don't know, I'll write you a recommendation letter. Alicia reached into her briefcase and pulled out a single sheet of paper. I'll need this in writing. Signed. Witnessed. You're actually serious about this? Board member Richard Cromwell leaned forward, his gray eyebrows raised. Miss Coleman, with all due respect, Blackstone Industries operates in 17 countries. We handle everything from construction to logistics to financial services, Alicia finished. Yes, I'm aware. She had been studying Blackstone Industries for 3 months. Not because she wanted a job there, but because her forensic accounting firm had been hired by a whistleblower who claimed the company was involved in something that went far beyond legitimate business. What she found in the preliminary documents made her sick to her stomach. Trevor slid the hastily drafted contract across the table. Sign away your dignity, sweetheart. This is going to be fun to watch. Alicia read the document carefully, then pulled out a red pen. She made 7 corrections to the legal language, crossed out 2 clauses that would have been unenforceable, and added a paragraph that made Trevor's lawyer sit up straighter. What are you doing? Trevor demanded. Fixing your contract, Alicia replied without looking up. Clause 4 would have voided the entire agreement under Delaware corporate law. Clause 9 had a typo that would have made the financial terms ambiguous. And you forgot to specify what constitutes failure in measurable terms. The lawyer, David Hutchinson, stared at the corrections. They were perfect. More than perfect, they showed an understanding of corporate law that most attorneys would struggle with. Where did you learn contract law? He asked quietly. Harvard Law Review, 2015 to 2017, Alicia said simply. I was managing editor. The room went completely silent. Trevor's confident smirk wavered for exactly 3 seconds before returning full force. Law review, huh? Well, let's see how your fancy education holds up in the real world. As she signed her name with fluid precision, Alicia allowed herself the smallest smile. Trevor Blackstone III had no idea that he had just handed operational control of his company to someone who had spent years investigating corporate financial crimes. Someone who already knew exactly what skeletons were hiding in his family's closets. Alicia's first day as interim CEO began at 6 a.m. While Trevor was probably still sleeping off whatever expensive whiskey he'd consumed the night before, she was already in the executive suite, surrounded by financial reports that painted a very interesting picture. Her assistant for the month, Janet Morrison, a sharp woman in her 50s who had worked for the company for 23 years, brought coffee and a knowing look. "Most of the real financial data is kept in the restricted server," Janet said quietly, glancing toward the door. "Mr. Blackstone doesn't think temporary employees need access." "I see," Alicia replied, noting the slight emphasis on temporary. "And you've worked with these systems for how long?" "Long enough to know when numbers don't add up." Alicia pulled up the quarterly reports Trevor had showed her during their bet. Revenue looked healthy. Profit margins seemed reasonable. Everything appeared normal. But Alicia had trained herself to see what wasn't there. "Janet, can you explain why a construction company needs to process this many international wire transfers?" Janet closed the door and returned to the desk. That's exactly what I've been wondering for the past 2 years." On the screen, Blackstone Industries had processed over $847 million in international transfers in the past 18 months. To accounts in the Cayman Islands, Switzerland, and several Eastern European countries with notoriously loose banking regulations. "A construction company," Alicia murmured, highlighting the numbers, "that reports annual revenue of $340 million, somehow moving $847 million offshore. The math was impossible. Unless... Janet, I need you to pull every international contract from the past 3 years. Every single one." "Ma'am, that would be thousands of documents." "Then we better get started." By Thursday of her first week, Alicia had assembled a paper trail that would make federal investigators weep with joy. The conference room looked like a crime scene from a financial thriller. Documents pinned to whiteboards, laptops displaying spreadsheets with suspicious patterns highlighted in red, and a growing pile of evidence that painted a picture of systematic money laundering. Janet knocked and entered with another stack of files. "I found the contracts you asked for. And something else." She placed a folder marked Confidential TB3 only on the table. "Trevor's personal files?" Alicia asked. "Found it in the shredder." "Incomplete shred job, probably interrupted." Janet's voice dropped to a whisper. "Ms. Coleman, if half of this is true..." Alicia opened the folder and immediately understood why Janet looked terrified. Internal memos detailing kickback arrangements with 3 major construction unions. Coded language referring to cleaning money from difficult clients. And most damning of all, a handwritten note from Trevor to someone identified only as VK discussing payment schedules for something called Project Scrub. "Janet, has anyone else seen this?" "Just me. And now you." Alicia's phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. "Know you're digging. Meet me tonight. Parking garage level B3. Come alone. A friend." She stared at the message, her mind racing. Someone else knew what she was discovering. Someone with access to her personal phone number. Someone who might be just as interested in bringing down Trevor Blackstone III as she was. The parking garage beneath the Blackstone Industries building was a maze of shadows and echoing footsteps. Alicia arrived at exactly 9 p.m., carrying nothing but her phone and a small recording device hidden in her jacket pocket. "Ms. Coleman." She turned to find Marcus Webb, Blackstone's chief financial officer, a man she had barely interacted with during her first week. He looked exhausted, and years older than his 42 years. "Mr. Webb, you sent the message." "I've been watching you work," he said quietly. "Watching you find things that I should have reported years ago." Marcus stepped closer, and she could see the strain in his face. "I've been documenting everything Trevor's been doing. The money laundering, the union kickbacks, the offshore accounts. All of it. Why haven't you gone to the authorities?" He laughed bitterly. "You think I haven't tried? Trevor's family has connections everywhere. Politicians, judges, federal agents. I've been building a case for 3 years, waiting for someone with enough credibility and independence to help me bring it to light." He handed her a flash drive. "Everything's on there. Bank records, recorded phone calls, documentation of every illegal transaction. Enough evidence to put Trevor and half his board in federal prison." "Someone's coming," Marcus whispered urgently. "Take the drive. Use it. And whatever you do, don't let Trevor know that you know. Marcus, if this is real, why are you still working here? His smile was sad and tired. Because someone needs to watch him. Someone needs to make sure he doesn't destroy evidence or hurt people who might testify. Car doors slammed somewhere in the garage. Marcus melted back into the shadows, leaving Alicia alone with a flash drive that could destroy one of the most powerful families in the country. Friday morning arrived with unexpected chaos. Alicia entered the executive suite to find Trevor pacing behind the desk, his usually perfect blonde hair disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled like he'd slept in it. "We have a problem," he said without preamble. "The feds are sniffing around our construction contracts in Nevada." Alicia's heart rate spiked, but her expression remained perfectly calm. "What kind of investigation?" "Money laundering task force. They're asking questions about payment schedules and subcontractor relationships." Trevor stopped pacing and stared directly at her. "You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" "I've been focused on operational efficiency and quarterly projections, as requested." "Right. Operational efficiency." Trevor's voice carried a dangerous edge. "Which is why I'm curious about your meeting with Marcus Webb last night." The blood in Alicia's veins turned to ice. He knew. "I'm not sure what you mean." Trevor pulled out his phone and played a video. Security footage from the parking garage, showing her conversation with Marcus, the exchange of the flash drive, everything. "You see, Alicia, can I call you Alicia? I've been in this business long enough to know when someone's playing games with me." He leaned against the desk casually, but his eyes were predatory. "The question is, are you just a nosy interim CEO, or are you something more interesting?" Alicia realized that her month-long investigation had just become something much more dangerous. Trevor wasn't just a privileged heir making racist bets. He was a criminal who had just discovered that his enemy had infiltrated his organization. "I think," Trevor continued, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper, "we need to renegotiate our little arrangement." "Actually," Alicia said, standing up from the conference table with calm precision, "I think our arrangement is working perfectly." She walked to the wall-mounted monitor and connected her laptop. Trevor watched with growing confusion as she pulled up a presentation titled, "Blackstone Industries, Financial Analysis Week 1. "You wanted me to prove I could run your company," Alicia said, clicking to the first slide. "Let me show you what I've accomplished." The slide displayed Blackstone's official revenue reports alongside banking records, showing the flow of international wire transfers. Trevor's face went pale. "Where did you get those banking records?" "Slide 2, Alicia continued, ignoring his question. "Documented kickback payments to union officials in Nevada, Oregon, and California." Slide 3, shell company formation documents linking Blackstone Industries to money laundering operations in the Cayman Islands. "You can't, this is corporate espionage. I'll have you arrested." "Slide 4, Alicia said calmly. "Audio recordings of your conversations with Viktor Kozlov discussing Project Scrub, which, by the way, is a fascinating way to describe washing money for Russian oligarchs." Trevor lunged toward the laptop, but Alicia had anticipated this. She stepped back as the conference room door opened and 3 people walked in: Marcus Webb, a woman in a dark suit carrying FBI credentials, and a man with a recorder and camera. "Trevor Blackstone 3, the FBI agent said, "you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit money laundering, racketeering, and violation of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act." "You set me up," Trevor snarled at Alicia as the agents began reading his rights. "Actually," Alicia replied, "you set yourself up. I was just competent enough to document it properly." The FBI agent, Special Agent Sarah Chun, turned to Alicia after Trevor had been escorted from the building in handcuffs. "Ms. Coleman, I need to inform you that you've been working as an undercover consultant for our Financial Crimes Task Force for the past 6 months." The board members who had witnessed Trevor's arrest stared in shock. 6 months. Richard Cromwell stammered. Agent Chen nodded. "Ms. Coleman approached us after her forensic accounting firm uncovered preliminary evidence of Blackstone's money laundering operation. She volunteered to go undercover when Trevor made his ridiculous bet, knowing it would give her access to internal documents." Alicia finally allowed herself to smile. "The Harvard MBA is real. The law review experience is real. But my primary expertise is in financial crime investigation. I've helped the FBI close cases involving over $2 billion in recovered assets. Marcus Webb stepped forward. Agent Chun, I have additional evidence that will be useful for prosecution. Mr. Webb has been our inside source for 18 months, Agent Chun confirmed. His cooperation will be noted in his plea agreement. Within hours, the story had exploded across financial news networks. Billionaire heir arrested in $800 million money laundering scheme. Racist bet leads to major financial crime bust. Harvard MBA brings down criminal empire. 3 months later, Alicia stood in her new office on the 32nd floor of the Federal Building in downtown Manhattan. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, she could see the Hudson River sparkling in the afternoon sun. Director Coleman, her assistant, called from the doorway. The Attorney General's office is on line 1. Director. Alicia Coleman, Director of the FBI's Corporate Financial Crimes Division. At 34, she was the youngest person ever appointed to lead the division, and the first black woman to hold the position. Her team had grown from the original task force of 12 agents to a full division of 87 specialists. In 3 months, they had recovered $1.2 billion in laundered assets and secured convictions in 17 related cases. Trevor Blackstone III had been sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. His family's company had been dissolved, with assets distributed to pension funds and charitable organizations that had been defrauded over the years. Marcus Webb, who had received a suspended sentence in exchange for his cooperation, now worked as a forensic accountant for the FBI, helping to identify financial crimes before they could cause widespread damage. Alicia glanced at the text message on her secure phone. It was from Agent Chun, who now served as her deputy director. New case just came in. Tech CEO in Silicon Valley making racist comments about hiring practices. Thinks diversity initiatives are ruining his company. Interested? Alicia smiled and typed back, "Send me the details." Some people never learn. She looked out at the city skyline, thinking about Trevor's words from that first day, "Anyone can run a company." He was right, she thought. Anyone can run a company. The bet had been for $500,000. The final recovery amount was $843 million. Not bad for a month's work. Some gambles, Trevor learned too late, simply aren't worth taking.